Live coverage of the launch of Expedition 32 crew members Sonny Williams, Yuri Malenchenko, and Aki Hoshide. As you can hear, audio is being piped in there to the Soyuz, which you're seeing now on a live view. This is the Soyuz rocket that will take these three crew members on a two-day journey to the International Space Station. The rocket is currently sitting on its launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, some 1,200 miles southeast of Moscow. The rocket is currently fully fueled and ready for liftoff tonight at 9:40 p.m. Central Time. That is 8:40 a.m. there at the launch site. The sun just coming up. The weather today is typical for this time of year there in Kazakhstan. It is a desert environment, so the weather is already at 90 degrees and heading on up above 100 by the time that we get to our launch time. There at the base of the rocket, the workers are putting their final preparations and making sure that everything is ready to go to support this morning's launch there in Baikonur, again at 9:40 p.m. Central Time here in Houston, 8:40 a.m. there at the launch site. These three crew members, which will join Expedition 32 in progress aboard the International Space Station, are about to begin a two-day journey up to the orbiting complex. Docking is scheduled for July 16th at 11:52 p.m. Central Time. That will be 8:52 a.m. in Moscow on July 17th. Once the Soyuz is docked to the Rosvet module, which is part of the Russian segment, the crew will join current station residents Joe Akaba, Gennady Padalka, and Sergei Revin. Those three have been aboard the station since May 16th, and they're scheduled to return to Earth aboard their Soyuz, which is the TMA 04M, on September 16th here in the U.S. Here in Houston, the team in Mission Control will be monitoring tonight's launch and getting updates on the flight from their Russian counterparts there at the Mission Control Center in Moscow. Tonight's flight director here in Houston is Paul Dye. He is sitting there, also joined by Mark Bowman there to the left. Bowman is a veteran of these Soyuz launches. He spent quite a bit of time in Moscow working as a liaison between NASA and the Russian Space Agency. Three veteran spacefarers make up this Soyuz TMA 05M launch crew to the International Space Station. NASA astronaut Sonny Williams will be making her second trip into space today, and her first aboard a Soyuz. Her first spaceflight was aboard Space Shuttle Discovery mission STS-116 back in 2006. That flight went up to the orbiting complex, where she joined the Expedition 14 and later Expedition 15 crews as a flight engineer. She has a total of 195 days in space. Veteran Russian cosmonaut Yuri Malenchenko is the commander of the Soyuz and will be making his fifth journey into space today. Malenchenko served as commander of the Russian Mir space station in 1994. Served aboard shuttle mission STS-106 to prepare for the ISS for its first resident crew, and spent two long-duration stays aboard ISS, first in 2003 as commander of Expedition 7, and then 4 years later as Expedition 16 flight engineer. And Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Aki Hoshide will be making his second trip into space today, and also his first aboard the Soyuz spacecraft. Hoshide first visited the ISS on the Space Shuttle Discovery mission STS-124 back in 2008, where he helped install, activate, and outfit the Japanese Kibo module and prepare his robotic arm, which is outside that particular portion of the International Space Station. This mission launches under the call sign Agate. That is the Russian word for a gemstone, and the same call sign used by Malenchenko on his previous 4 journeys into space. You will see a toy or a talisman there hanging above him. This small toy doll was given to Malenchenko by his young daughter. It is hung there during every single Soyuz mission and is the first sign that the crew has achieved weightlessness up in space. We spoke with the crew members before the flight about their upcoming expedition, their careers preparing for the flight, and what they are most looking forward to. Here now is the crew in their own words.
Building a foundation for future space exploration is the goal of this flight for the 3 newest members of the International Space Station crew. U.S. Navy Captain Sonny Williams is a native of Euclid, Ohio, who grew up in Needham, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston.
I love the town, I love the people, I love the accent, I love people are a little bit rough around the edges. I was a swimmer, my brother and sister and I were swimmers. We swam at Harvard University on a club team there. So every day, twice a day, we drove into town for swimming practice in the morning and in the afternoon. So I knew Boston pretty much like the back of my hand when I was growing up there.
She'd considered a career as a veterinarian, but decided some of the science would be too hard, and ended up at the Naval Academy because her brother had been there and knew how to sell her on it.
He did because I like outdoorsy things, and he knew he could hook me with that. He said, "Sonny, you get to jump out of airplanes and do parachuting and go camping and stuff like that." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Williams was on the swim team and the cross-country team and the bike club, and went to jump school and earned a bachelor's degree in physical science at Annapolis. She started her Navy career as a diver before becoming a helicopter pilot, and made deployments to the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the Persian Gulf. She was picked for test pilot school, and a class trip to the Johnson Space Center in Houston set her on a new career course.
I met John Young for the first time, who talked about landing on the moon and talked about using a vertical landing system to land on the moon. Oh, that sounds like helicopters. So I thought, wow, maybe I have what it takes to be an astronaut if I get my master's degree.
Williams worked as a test pilot while earning a master's in engineering management from Florida Institute of Technology, and then was an instructor and safety officer at test pilot school before being selected as an astronaut in 1998. She made 4 spacewalks during her first trip to the International Space Station as flight engineer on expeditions 14 and 15 in 2006 and 2007, and established a record for the longest single spaceflight by a woman at 195 days. Then she served as deputy chief of NASA's astronaut office before being selected to start training for a second flight and the chance to help extend the reach of the species.
We can use the International Space Station as a laboratory, a test bed for new technologies that will hopefully allow us as NASA to go beyond low Earth orbit in the next 10, 15 years.
Retired Russian Air Force Colonel Yuri Malenchenko was born in Svetlovodsk in Ukraine, which was a young city with a high-tech industrial base that attracted a lot of young college graduates.
City with a lot of trees, very beautiful nature, big water reservoir and pine woods. And so, you know, a very nice, pleasant, positive environment place to be.
Malenchenko grew up in a time when most children dreamed of being a cosmonaut. Yet after high school, he first went to college to study applied mathematics in relation to computer programs. A year later, he changed colleges to pursue his other dream.
Oh yes, I really did want to become a fighter pilot. I always dreamed of this back when I was a high school student, grade 7 or 8. As far as back then, I already knew that I wanted to be a pilot.
He graduated from the Kharkov Military Aviation School and then spent more than 4 years as a fighter pilot in the Soviet Air Force, before being selected as a cosmonaut in 1987. In 1994, he commanded the Mir-16 crew, completed 2 spacewalks, and was the first cosmonaut to ever complete a manual docking of a Progress supply ship after the automatic docking system failed. He made 1 spacewalk on his first trip to the International Space Station on the 2000 shuttle mission that outfitted the newly arrived Zvezda module, returned to command the station for 6 months during Expedition 7 in 2003, and did 1 more spacewalk while serving as Expedition 16 flight engineer in 2007 and 2008, for a total of 515 days in space on his first 4 flights. Malenchenko is enthusiastic about building a program that he believes will lead to more and more people one day getting a chance to do what he has done.
Everything that we do as part of the program that we're currently involved in, of course, will lay a robust foundation that will make the future possible.
Japanese astronaut Aki Hoshide is a native of Tokyo who got his first attraction to the idea of spaceflight the first time he lived in America.
I lived in New Jersey when I was small, and went to the Smithsonian, went down to Kennedy Space Center, see the rockets, and also watched a lot of TV programs and movies, related to science fiction. And that kind of fascinated me the idea of going into space and going to different worlds.
Hoshide's family returned to Japan when he was 7, and he continued his education there, even attending a high school near the Japanese Space Center in Tsukuba at the time the first Japanese astronauts were selected, and he first thought that astronaut might be the career for him. After high school, he studied at the United World College of Southeast Asia in Singapore, then returned to Japan to earn his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Japan's Keio University.
By that time, the second selection was starting. So I tried to apply, but I didn't have any working experience. So I wasn't eligible to apply. So I started working for the Japanese Space Agency as an engineer and waited for the next chance.
Hoshide worked in the development of the H-2 rocket, and then as an astronaut support engineer, which included an assignment in Houston, where he earned a master's in aerospace engineering from the University of Houston. He was selected for Japan's astronaut program in 1999, completed its training course, and then training as the Soyuz spacecraft flight engineer at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, followed by NASA's astronaut candidate training course at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Hoshide flew to the International Space Station on the 2008 space shuttle flight that delivered Kibo and the Japanese robotic arm, and he was the first astronaut to operate the Japanese arm on orbit. Now he's making an investment in the future of spaceflight and all that it could give us.
And that could be science, that could be technology, developing different cultures, new cultures in space, just giving opportunities and possibilities for the next generation. I think that, for me, that's what we're doing right now.
This is Mission Control Houston, back now with a live view of the Soyuz rocket getting ready to carry Yuri Malenchenko, Sonny Williams, and Aki Hoshide up into space and toward the International Space Station. This rocket you see there stands 162 feet tall. It weighs 680,000 pounds. Both the rocket and the spacecraft share the exact same name. The Soyuz capsule that the crew is currently inside was mated to its booster there in Baikonur on Wednesday. The Soyuz rocket was transported by rail car to the launch pad shortly after sunrise on Thursday. It was soon stood up to a vertical position, and workers have been working since then to get it ready for this evening's launch. This particular Soyuz that the crew is currently inside is the TMA 05M, that is its name. These vehicles were recently upgraded with new avionics and enhanced systems that are part of the M series. The Soyuz TMA 04M is currently docked with the International Space Station. You see the current layout there with the European Automated Transfer Vehicle, a big cargo carrier back there at the back. The Progress 47, which is a Russian cargo carrier there on the bottom side, the Piers docking compartment. The Soyuz 30, or the TMA 04M, up there on the Poisk module, soon to be joined by this TMA 05M, which you see the three sections there, that descent module there in the middle. That is where the crew is, and that is the only piece that comes back home. After it separates from the station, the orbital module comes loose, the instrumentation and service module also comes loose, and that descent module is what the crew re-enters once it's time to come back home. Here's a look inside the descent module. You see the quarters there. Each one of those couches that the crew members sit in is custom designed for each one of them. It is molded to their body, and right before they land, just a split second before they hit the ground, those couches actually tilt up to help absorb some of the shock of the landing. But you see the instrumentation panel there. We'll be taking another look at this vehicle coming up later on in our broadcast to talk about this workhorse of the Russian space fleet and what's about to carry Sonny Williams, Aki Hoshide, and Yuri Malenchenko up to their home for the next 6 months, the International Space Station.